Wanna know where is my tool bucket? Who took it from me? Broke into my house that night and stole from me. Using up blowtorches, quite insanity. Then got a rock and threw it through the window, the back door window. Snuck into the house, that foolish bucket foe. Took it to the pawn shop to get money. Need your hands here now. Hey dude man, coolest thing around. My show now, you're my hands right now. This is Adam Sheffield. Welcome to American Heritage Center Radio, home of the Property Therapy and Talent Development Program. We're talking to Bernie Bried today, and he is the former executive director of Beth Shalom, the largest conservative Jewish synagogue in Kansas City. And this show is brought to you by La Plaza Restaurant. Some of the best Latin food in the Kansas City metro area. Give them a call at 816-836-8688. And it's a pleasure to have you with us today, Bernie.
It's great being here.
And Bernie has a background as a creative leader and motivator with a strong background in sales, business development, and marketing, and in entrepreneurial and consulting. And that's one of the positive property therapy issues out there is creation. Mm-hmm. And on the show, and Bernie was the former executive director for 4 years.
4 years
at Beth Shalom, the largest conservative synagogue in Kansas City area. It's in Overland Park. And then over the years, Bernie has helped companies introduce programs, products, and services for entering new markets, and has developed and taught telecommunications and proposal writing courses. And in university settings, he has his MBA, and he was also a commencement. He spoke at the commencement speaker at
Baker University.
Right, and so when we met each other at Beth Shalom.
Correct.
When Jeff Foley and I came there, and that's one of the outreach efforts that we have at the Heritage Center, is connecting with different faith orientations and then channeling it, how they have forward momentum and how they're taking amazing care of property and property therapy issues. And when you were at the doing entrepreneurial, like creating business plans and stewarding things and creating things, people take that for granted, that these creation, that enterprise, it's so easy to take that for granted. It just doesn't happen, does it?
Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't. It's a lot of work, and there's a lot of good ideas. They say that you hold an idea in your head for about 14 seconds. And I always tell people to write it down, put it in your phone, so when you get home, you'll remember what you said or remember what you thought of. And how many times have you even sat down and you see a new product or a new service? Says, I thought of that years ago. Why didn't I do something? Well, you didn't remember that you had it. I know people that keep a pen and pad by their bedside so that if they think of something or they have a dream and they get up for a few moments, they write it down real quick. In the morning, they may not know why they wrote it down, but there apparently was a reason for it.
And that's a way of creating intellectual property. It's like if you have a dream of something, like Paul McCartney, when he woke, he said, I was sleeping and I heard the melody of yesterday. You know that? He says, I heard the melody of yesterday in my dream, and then I wrote it down. And I thought I had heard it from somebody else. It was just playing in my dream. And Paul McCartney says, and I just went around to different people who were like, have you heard this before? And John Lennon was like, no, never heard that before.
Well, I heard on the radio driving here today, and they were saying that the Beatles took their name because Buddy Holly in the 1950s had the Crickets. And they liked Buddy Holly, so they figured, well, he can be the Crickets, we're the Beatles. They spelled it with B-E-A-T.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right on. So you have that. So it's so easy to laden down, like, businesses, like the fruits of prosperity, and want to, like, distribute it to everything and laden it down with all these government social programs. And then it's like putting more and more weight on the beast of the donkey of the enterprise when you're not feeding the enterprise in any way.
Well, a lot of people have a lot of good ideas, but everything you do in life is an opportunity cost or an opportunity gain. And if you put your resources, whether they're mental resources, financial resources, any kind of resources, physical resources, into something, that means you can't use it for something else. So it's not only having an idea, it's looking what is a problem that idea will solve. And will people pay a premium price for that idea? Because if you're not going to make money, then what's the sense of doing it?
Right. So it has the property therapy aspect of it. You finding the need.
It's the need
of humanity, and then how the flow back. What's the flow back benefit to it in financial ways, and then you could have it. And like when you were, it's more than just financial ways too. Like when you were executive director at Beth Shalom, I was a talent harbor for you to develop your talents.
Well, for me,
bring that out.
Well, the nice thing about having gray hair is you have a lot of experiences, and as long as you use those experiences as you go on through life, you're going to be a lot better off. Baker University, where I teach in the School of Professional and Graduate Studies, so I teach many adult learners, not your traditional students who are down in Baldwin City. And in the commencement speech, because people were so many different ages in the audience, I talked about being a lifelong learner. Learn every day.
Absolutely.
And Henry Ford, the founder of Ford Motor Company, had a great line. He said, once you stop learning, you're old, whether you're 20 or 80. Keep learning and stay young.
When I was in grad school, I wrote an essay on this about late starter musicians, diamonds in the rough. And when I began studying with Klausner, he was my first real violin teacher, and I was a mess technically, and because I was self-taught for 6 years, and I just taught myself all wrong. How to do all these things.
Well,
and Klausner, though, let's talk about Klausner, was our connection. My beloved violin teacher.
And I remember you coming in and you were talking about the violin, and I asked if you knew Tibor Klausner. And that's when your eyes lit up and you said yes. And I see the picture of Tibor and you 20 years ago, and that's great. And Tibor was the first person I ever met that was actually from Transylvania. I didn't know anybody but Dracula came from Transylvania.
Yeah, no, and he always told the joke about the violin mark on his neck. When violinists play, they put the violin underneath their chin, and then for some violinists they get a press mark here. And so Mr. Klausner had a good mark on his chin.
He was a wonderful man, and his wife Carla still comes to services with us, and miss him a lot.
Yeah, and so his was he dealt in the realm of intellectual property, songs, pieces to play, right?
I remember that line from I forget, that pompous doctor on MASH. When there was a musician and he couldn't play, he thought, because his right hand was not usable, and he got him music for the left hand. And the guy said, well, you can play the music. He said, no, I can play the notes. I've heard you. You play the music. And that gets back to how you're using your talent, but Tibor was just outstanding.
When I was in law school, I remember the professor had me bring my violin to the courtroom one day, and this is in trial advocacy class, and the professor said, he told me to play two contrasting styles. So I played Star Wars, and then I played, the other one was Ness and Norma, Italian opera. Ness and Norma, tu vorrei principessa. And then after, the professor takes the music off my stand, and he holds it up to the law students in the courtroom, and he says, to most of you all, this is just ink blots on a sheet, like what you were saying, ink blots on the music sheet.
Right.
He says, but he took these ink blots and made a song. that you could readily relate to.
Yep.
That's your job as attorneys, is to take all those masses of facts out there and make a song that the trier of fact can relate to. A powerful parable.
That's right.
And that's what you did. You did when you're creating business plans. You're creating that score, right? So people can hear it, see it, the score, and then people start playing it, bringing it alive.
Well, I'm from the old school. I like talking to people. I've watched people text each other in the next cubicle, which I find amusing. Get up and walk over there, all right? I'll pay for the shoe leather. And people are just more comfortable texting and emailing. And what happens is people don't know how to write anymore because they're not doing formal writing. They're doing texting and email writing, which is different. So people forget how to really write, but they forget how to talk. And I wrote an article on this, and I said, who has to talk when we have thumbs? You can do all your texting and everything else. And words are so powerful. Words are so important. You don't know what the person's really telling you. You hear the words.
Right.
You don't know what they really mean in a written document. But when you look at them face to face, you'll know if they're kidding. You know if they mean it. You know if they're being sarcastic. You just know. And words are very powerful, but taken wrong or used wrong can destroy relationships and can destroy partnerships and many other things.
Right. But when you were executive director of Beth Shalom, you used words when you were writing your sermonettes.
Yeah, well, I write like I talk. And I have Dragon software, so I do wear headphones. And in my head, I am talking so it's typing for me. Or even when I'm typing without the software, I'm still talking. I write exactly like I talk.
So when you were executive director, this was a talent harbor for you to develop your.
I don't know if it was a talent harbor for me to develop. I think it allowed me to take everything that I've learned over the years and all of the experiences I've had over the years, and add to it. The thing I enjoyed most, though, about being the executive director, besides all the administrative and security and building issues and everything else that I handled, and membership and the cemetery we owned and so on, it was the people. We were a synagogue of 600 families. 600 families is about 1,500 people. And I was able to help a lot of them, and that meant a lot to me. I was able to help them get through, not the religious part of it, or not the observance part of it. Rabbi and Chazan, who's the cantor in our synagogue, did an outstanding job on that. But there were other things that they just knew I can handle, and they would call me, and I would help them. Many times people who were sick would call me because they knew me and were comfortable, and I would go make sure the rabbi knew so he could, do what he needs to do. But people is what made the difference there. I've been in organizations before. I've done a lot in life, but I had never had the opportunity to work with that many people. And what other job can you have where you have 1,500 bosses and love it?
And it says that with the spiritual diaspora in that special harbor there.
Yeah, I don't know that it would have been as that I could have done what I had done if it was not the synagogue. There's
a vibrancy that's in the law. I feel it, and I know it's real. And when I read the Torah, which is
it's the five books of Moses.
Yes, the Pentateuch.
It's the Jewish Bible.
That when you read the words of Moses, he says, "I give unto you this law forever." And then you see that vibrancy. And there's different faith orientations that interpret the fundamental laws, and you can have various states that people are in, like first grade, second grade, third grade, forever. For first graders, forever. First grade is for first graders forever. Second grade, second grade. Right. But some people, it's the hunger for staying in the fundamentals and feeling that vibrancy. It's real. It's a real thing.
Yeah, we have a gentleman in our synagogue who's very active, Dr. Norman Kahn, who I believe is on the national board of the Boy Scouts for interfaith. And there are many other religions on this with him. And every year or two, I think it's every 2 years, they actually take scouts to synagogues and mosques and churches and so on, and they learn two of the commandments here and 2 of the commandments at the next one and another one at the next one and so on. Awesome. So they get the distribution, so to speak.
That's an important thing.
And it's wonderful that that we're able to do that and work together. And is it Adam? I forget his last name. Who heads up CORE?
Not sure.
The largest Methodist church in the country, Church of the Resurrection. Well, he has spoken in my synagogue.
Well, that's part of being a fully educated person is having a faith orientation. In my library, I organize the truth taxonomy system I developed when I got out of law school. Well, I put science, objective truth over here, art, subjective truth over here, and then the middle ground between art and science, philosophy. Mm-hmm. And the branch of philosophy, one branch of philosophy is the divine command theory of philosophy, which is faith orientation. So that's part of philosophy. That's part of the middle ground between art and science is the philosophy, and then the faith orientation is part of being a fully educated person.
Right, and that comes from learning every day. Because a lot of people think, I'm finished with school, I don't have to learn anything else.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you have to start learning.
I've learned more on my own than I ever did in school.
Let me tell you, which kind of will help you understand why I get so involved in the creative process. I graduated from high school in January of 1963. I graduated with both my bachelor's and master's the same day. In January 1983, 20 years later. And I bring that up because I was always with bleeding edge and leading edge companies because larger companies wouldn't hire me. I wasn't degreed. So I had to be creative. I had to learn how to be. I had to learn how to compete differently. And that really gave me the basis for the way I think.
And so this is creating business plans. It's
well,
huge.
Whether it's business, but also in anything you do. I mean, I don't know that what I was able to do as executive director of the synagogue, you don't learn out of a book. Oh, you can learn what a budget is, and you can learn how to keep logs on things, and you can learn, I guess, out of a book how to run a cemetery. But there's so many other things. The people side, the strategic side. There's so many things you need to understand. How can we get it done? I never want to hear, we don't do it that way here. Yeah. I never want to hear, oh, no, you can't do that. It doesn't work. Don't tell me how we can't do it. Let's sit down and figure out how we can do it.
All things are possible as long as they're not inimical to the will of the Creator. All things are possible. And it's just a matter of creating, Mm-hmm. You create it first in your mind, and when you're writing out your business plans, you're fleshing things out to persuade other people. Right? Mm-hmm. Financial backers, right?
If you don't have a good plan, and you don't have numbers that are believable, and I used to teach a lot of workshops on how to write pro formas, which is the projections of how your financials are going to look over a 3 or 5 year period. And if you don't have the right management team put together, you're not going to raise money for your business.
Right. So you're creating the financial, developing credibility.
It's credible, and you have to know. Right, exactly.
And it makes it look like, well, you've got this planned out for the contingencies. Or
exactly.
The parties, you've got the capable people around you.
Right, and what you don't want is your Uncle Harry, your Aunt Mildred, and your cousin Arthur as your partners. What you want is people that are going to complement what you do, not do the same thing you do.
Exactly. And because also, I mean, it's like hiring for your real estate agent, your brother, if if they're not effectively helping with the product, or you can't let them go, can you? Without repercussions, social repercussions.
It depends.
Emotional repercussions.
It depends how much money you want to lose. I mean, that's your call.
That's true. So we're talking, for those that have just tuned in, this is Adam Sheffield. To tune in, to be part of the conversation, call me at 816-674-3035. We are talking with Bernie Bried, who is the former executive director of the Jewish synagogue, Beth Shalom. And I've had a lot of important Jewish influence in my life, people that have given me positive momentum in my life. And there's that driver. And I sense this when I was reading your Divrei Torah, right? And these are, tell us about this, your articles that you wrote when you were in your executive director. These are. We have a house organ. Would you say these are sermonettes?
No, I wouldn't call it that. The Devar Torah, when I give it, is on the Torah portion, so I guess you could call it that. It's more of a teaching on what we read in the Torah, but it's a teaching from what does Bernie Bried get out of it? Mm-hmm. What did I learn from it?
This is the purpose of life,
right?
The wisdom. What did you learn from this?
And I don't get into the deep-rooted meaning within the Torah. I mean, there are experts for that, and they've been fighting for thousands of years. And for every religion's been fighting over what the real meaning is.
Until the creator comes down on Fox News and CNN and says, this is the way I want it done. Right. You're going to have all that.
So I just made some notes here. Family, faith, and tradition is really what embodies everything I believe in. But, you read Genesis, you read Bereshit, you read the very, very beginning of the Torah, and it talks about, the beginning of the world, right?
This is something fascinating. When I was reading through some of these, the lessons you got, you have different, it's like different facets on the diamond. Here's an example. In one of your thoughts, you put on talking about the experience of Abraham arguing with God to save the people of Sodom. Mm-hmm. And then the lesson that you wrote was never be afraid to stand your ground by telling those in authority what you feel is right.
Right.
I never even.
Right. And then you read the rest of it. None of us has the physical strength to fight the government or an angry mob, let alone God. But we all have a voice. We can use that voice for the benefit of mankind. We can use our voice to fight injustice.
So this is extraordinary. So in addition to that, you also talk about forgiveness, not holding a grudge, because that releases the terrorists from your mind.
I must tell you, I used to hold grudges. Very honestly, I'd just hold it in. And I had a talk with our rabbi one day, and he told me something very interesting, and ever since then, I do not hold a grudge anymore. He said, when you hold a grudge, you're allowing somebody else to live in your head. And I finally realized, I don't have enough room for all the crap I have there now, never mind another person.
So that's the possessory of the body property. You don't want to have that.
And Moses' journey, through the desert. 40 years to go, 230 miles or whatever it really is. Never give up.
Right.
Just keep going. And that's where I came up with, throughout life, you're going to stumble, you're going to fall, and you're going to fail. Yeah. Get up and keep going forward.
Yeah. And on that, he kept on, God wandered the house of Israel around for 40 years in the desert,
right.
And the generation died off. Pretty much that were Egyptian dwellers.
Well, he wanted them all to die off.
Yeah.
Because not into Canaan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No. And because he had said that, he said that to Moses. He says, I don't want to deal with these people. So Moses interceded on their behalf, like Abraham.
Right.
And so that was God's way of.
Right. And Moses was never allowed into Canaan. He saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, but the children of Israel, all the people there, they were hearkening back to the flesh pots of Egypt. They wanted to go back, and then God says, "I want a fresh."
Because they were afraid, and they didn't have it's a question of faith, and
right.
And but it's the Torah to me is a roadmap for life.
Yeah.
You can take it literally, or I don't. but it teaches you life lessons. Every parsha in there, every story in there is a lesson when you really read it.
And and then we were talking about that, afraid, being fear, that's something that it's difficult to teach risk takers, right?
I had been asked by a major donor to the Rainier Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Block School at UMKC, do I really believe I can teach someone to be an entrepreneur? And I said, absolutely not. I said, I can teach someone to take an idea, write a plan, put a team together, launch a business, and grow a business. But there's one thing I cannot teach, nor can anyone else, how to take risk. Mm-hmm. It's in you or it's not in you. What I teach is the entrepreneurial mindset. Because if you think like an entrepreneur, whether you're in corporate life, working in a family business, working in the government, no matter where you are, then you're going to try different things. You're going to think, how can I do that better? Mm-hmm. And that's why I may have told you before, I truly believe that no one should ever get into trouble for making a mistake.
Right.
If you don't tell somebody you made a mistake and they have to figure it out later, that's different.
And along those lines of risk-taking, when I was in the Block School in the taking an entrepreneurial class mm-hmm. with Tony Lapino, and I remember something that Professor Lapino said about the people that have been some of the most powerful entrepreneurs, risk-takers, tend to be people that have a powerful faith orientation.
Yes.
Because it helps you play long ball. Mm-hmm. It helps you endure through the hard times, the scary times.
I have a friend who
keep your wits about you when others are not.
I have a friend that actually invented the PC modem. I didn't know him then. He was 22, 23 years old when he did it. A fellow out of Georgia Tech. And, Dennis does have a deep faith. He's been through a lot, but he's the reason a lot of us can do what we do today.
Yeah, it's incredible. So when you're risk takers, we have here in the studio, he's been very quiet, Bowie. Hey, this is Bernie, and he's the innovator master, the creation. He's the rainmaker for the innovations, teaching the kids to be the powerful creative forces. And bowerbirds. Now, Bowie here is a bowerbird. And he's the property therapy bird. He's the mascot of the show. And the bowerbird is a species of birds that build bowers to attract the ladybirds. And they are on the ground, and they're considered among the most intelligent of birds. And they watch other birds, the older birds, and they learn property therapy skills. And each year their bowers get more and more impressive as they watch and learn how the older birds are doing it. And they've been seen to paint the inner of their bowers, which is like a gazebo on the ground, and with berry juice. And they get this dauber, and they smear the berry juice on the walls of the bower. And they also have been seen to, they collect pieces of trinkets right there. If the blue is their color, often it is, or white, they'll take blue straws, blue bottle caps, blue round things on the water bottles, blue pieces of plastic, and they go and put it around. They'll pave, like with paver stones, in front of their bowers in front, and so they're considered so they're the property therapy bird. This is Bowie here. But Bowie, when you build your nest, you got to be an entrepreneur. There's some risk involved, right, Bowie? Oh yeah. So when you can have some like if you build your bowers in the wrong places, they can get upset. Oh yeah. So he knows about the risk taking, and so this is whatever we can do to enhance people to have that, charge the faith orientation in their lives. It helps to be a creative force in their lives, which is what we want to have. Because the property therapy, we deal with the property therapy issues of positive and negative issues. And the bright line rule is on the negative property therapy issue is like, is it going to materially affect the property? It can materially damage the property. So like break-ins and thefts or mob violence can be to destroy you, or break-ins and thefts, and or maintenance issues, and the which is that's the theme song is based on the Lost Tool Bucket.
Right.
You've heard that,
Yes.
And that's based on somebody broke into my rental property and stole my tool bucket. And so I wrote a song about that. That's a negative property therapy issue. And so the positive issues of property therapy are like, how are you going to realize your dreams? How are you going to create this property?
You know, we tend to be a world of warriors. When things are going good, we wait for the other, wait a minute, how long is this going to last? When things aren't going so well, we worry, well, now what's going to happen? We're never happy with what we have. We're never happy with what we do. And a lot of the times I think we create our own issues.
And this is the morale of the property therapist right now. It's affected by worry.
Right. And you just need to keep, that's why I talked about stumbling, falling, and failing.
Remember Irma Bombeck?
Yes. That was actually the first article I wrote. I was at my insurance agent's office, and I saw that on his wall. And it said, worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do but doesn't get you anywhere. And I wrote an article, and it's funny, I remembered I wrote a similar article about 25 years before when I was at Sprint. I wrote an article. And I talked about somebody was told by his doctor to walk 10 miles a day. He needed to get the exercise and lose weight. So he walked 10 miles a day for 30 days. At the end of the 30 days, he was 300 miles from home. He didn't know where he was, and he had no idea where he was going. And that's the problem. We need to know where we're going. We need to have a roadmap.
Right. Creating things intellectually, spiritually.
And we'll always have to be creative on that road, no matter what we're doing in life, because we're going to hit dead ends, we're going to hit roadblocks, we're going to hit potholes. I think it was Walt Disney that said too many people get off one exit too early. They just quit. And I tell the story, I think it's in here, about Howard Schultz, who founded Starbucks. He was prepared to meet 242 investors. 242. Talk about perseverance. Talk about not giving up. Talking about having a dream. Talking about, I'm going to make this happen. The first 217 turned him down flat. And he kept going.
FTS, follow the spirit.
Yeah.
we have our rings here at the Heritage Center.
And he put it together. You have to have a tremendous belief in yourself and in others and move forward.
And that's been one of the incredible things about the Judaism, is that how they've hung in there in some, like, thousands of millennia under captivity. There's no people that have kept their cultural consciousness and have been under millennia of suppression, yet kept their cultural consciousness. I know there's in world history, I don't know of any.
There hasn't been. I wrote
They get subsumed into the culture. They just disappear.
Yeah, I mean, people have been trying to destroy us for generations and generations and generations, and we're still here.
And I remember I was talking to as the director of the American Heritage Center. I have conversations with faith orientation leaders throughout the world, and I remember one conversation was with some Jews about Judaism and the dietary observances, and we were talking about that, like, say, eating pork, and the manifest. That today we have refrigeration. Back then you could get trichinosis. You could die very easily, but today we have the refrigeration. But the spiritual component, I mean, you can eat it and it doesn't do physical harm to you, but the spiritual component of it, like the parable of like, be careful what you're partaking, what you're eating spiritually, what you're partaking from the world. You see, so this is part of it that help the elements in Judaism that helped them not be subsumed by the in captivity. Would you agree?
I always viewed Judaism. Yes,
powerful parable.
Yeah, I used to always view Judaism as a way of life. It's the way you live your life, more than just going to services and what have you. And I think it's that way with a lot of people that have faith. So I agree with you there. One of the quotes I love, and I guess I'm backtracking a little bit, that Joan London said. We talked about worrying and what have you, and not holding a grudge. Joan London wrote about heartache and heartbreak. She said, holding on to anger, resentment, and hurt only gives you tense muscles, a headache, a sore jaw from clenching your teeth. Forgiveness gives you back the laughter and the lightness in your life.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something about like it helps to build the morale and somehow.
Right.
And that's a huge property therapy issue, is the morale of the property therapist. Because if the property therapist can't take care of this body property, how is he going to take care of all this other kind of property?
See, and here's the other thing. When you talk about, taking care of property, whether it be material or spiritual or what have you, I wrote here, Art Buchwald said, whether it's the best of times or the worst of times, it's the only time we've got. Even God takes the time to prepare. Remember, it wasn't raining when he asked Noah to build the ark.
Right. So we have then the faith orientation for Thomas Jefferson. We were talking about this when you asked me, well, what's your faith orientation now? They threw us off the ship. Right. The Mormons threw us off the ship. So Bernie was asking me, well, what's your faith orientation right now? And people ask me this, and I want to say, well, I'm at large. And it's the same answer Thomas Jefferson gave. They said Thomas Jefferson. They asked him, well, what's your faith orientation? And Thomas Jefferson said, well, I'm an apiarian, and that's a honeybee. That goes from the nectar to take from the various flowers, to get the nectar from the various flowers, and to that, and then like Jesus comes into the picture for me, and then there's a quote. This is from our bookmark of quotations that our family gave out when we perform in our family band. We did a mission for America for 10 years before I got into law school. But there's a quote from Shalom Ash, and he says, "Every act and word of Jesus has value for us. He became the light of the world. Why shouldn't I, a Jew, be proud of that?" And so for the light, the bright horizon is my eyes before the bright horizon, and I just want to run toward that. And I think about, I want to ask this question, and we were talking about this too. HVAC Tony asked you about this. Well, if you weren't born this or that, what would you be right now? And I think for my end, I don't think any churchianity could hold me. They'd probably throw me off the ship.
But I've always been Jewish. I always felt Jewish, so I wouldn't even know how to answer that question. When he asked me, if I wasn't born Jewish, what would I be? I told him I'd be in the Bronx for 75 years. I mean, I don't know what I'd be. I'd probably still be there.
That's how I'm. Yeah,
I've never thought of anything but being Jewish, and I can't imagine that I ever would.
Yeah. Well, I've certainly had powerful. I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I've not had that inspirational Jewish influences around me, like Mr. Klausner. First. Came to me in my formative years, and I interviewed him on the radio show for my first radio show 20 years ago. And
he could read your book.
Yeah. So this is from the bookmark of powerful quotations about freedom and faith and how to make the most of your life. And I'll give you this to you. We give these out when we perform, and we did our family chamber orchestra. We would travel around the country before I got into law school, and we got tired of people saying, well, look what's happening to our country. What's going on? Well, what are you doing about it? You see? So we went out there where the rubber meets the road and performing a lot in the streets. This is a family chamber orchestra.
Right.
And I was playing the gigs. We were playing like Mozart's 40th Symphony, Beethoven's 5th Symphony, Carmen's. And my dad was the conductor. All us 8 kids in there in the orchestra.
Well, it's because of Tibor, actually.
It is.
That I listen to chamber music, and I enjoy it.
I know to this day. But he helped me get my violin chops so that I could perform. He helped me craft my technique, helped me channel myself, because I was just a mess. When I first saw him, I was a mess.
When you look at me in music, not even Tibor could have done it.
Well, I think if you have a love for something, that's a talent waiting to be developed. That's what I always tell like late starter musicians, because with in Tibor, I first started. He was the first time I really had a teacher. I was on my own, a mess. Yeah. And I came in there. I was the worst sob story. And but my dad just kept on talking to him, and wouldn't take no for an answer.
See?
And but we have here's some of the music that Tibor wrote for me, and I have before me. This is we're talking about Tiberius Klausner, and he was nicknamed Tibor for his friends Tibor, and I always called him Mr. Klausner, and I interviewed him for the radio show. The first radio show I did 20 years ago, and I did a piece on the departing conductor of the Kansas City Symphony. And so he was one of the people that I interviewed on the show. But Bach is one of the violinists, it's one of the most favorite music for a violinist to play. And you can see this is the bowings that he would write. See down here, the up and downs, and violin and bows. They have. If you want to go a down bow, it looks like this. There's a square. That means down bow, like this. Or if you want to go up bow, there's a caret. That means up. And then you see the slurs, and that's how you would group the notes in one bow, like da 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 da. Or if you want to do it separate, da 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 da. If there's not circles around it. So he would write these things, and these are precious to me. To be able to come up, for a violinist, you can change the character of the piece if by the bowings that you write. And this is intellectual property therapy for the intellectual property.
He was the youngest concert master in the history of the Kansas City Symphony, probably one of the youngest in the country ever. And
I remember I can always hear him say, "Adam, have you been practicing your skills?" He was very much into the practicing of scales, and very much like Heifetz when he won the Heifetz Prize. Heifetz was very much about scales. One of the most in tune violinists and prolific recorders in the world, and he won the Heifetz Prize.
I am aware.
It's amazing. And but we're talking here to Bernie Bried, and he's the former executive director of Beth Shalom, and the powerful experiences that you've had when you were the property therapy experiences that you had. There were positive issues like talent harbors, developing and being able to write and share your wisdom that you developed. Those are the talent harbors, the flowback benefits for you and for others. There are also challenges, which on the negative side, which would be like security issues.
There's always, life is a challenge, and it's not a perfect world, and it never will be. It was for a few nanoseconds, and till Eve ate the apple. So we started over. It's not a perfect world, and there's going to be issues, and there's going to be problems. And, for salespeople, we used to teach them to draw a line down the middle of the paper. The Ben Franklin close, we used to call it, and this is the advantages, and this is the disadvantages. And everything you do in life is good and bad. And I've never heard the term property therapy until I met you, but I get what you're getting at. Where you're coming from now, and you can make your own list of positives and negatives for anything you're trying to make a decision on. there's no wrong decision that you make in life. There's no wrong. It was the right decision at the time you made it.
You definitely can learn from your experiences.
But you learn. Now, it could happen that a half hour later it turned out to be the worst thing you ever thought. But with the data you have, you'll never have perfect information in life, ever. You're never going to have everything you need. At some point, though, you need to make a call. You need to make a decision.
Wise learn by precept, fools by punishment, if at all. Yeah. And so you can learn from others, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the power. That's the power of your faith orientation writings. Mm-hmm. It helps to motivational and inspire, so people don't have to make this stupid thing. So they be more discerning.
Well, I hope they're being motivated when I read them. But I know it does a lot for me, and I hope it does a lot for them.
So when you were executive director, when Jeff and I came and visited, the security was quite impressive in that building. This is a property therapy issue, and so that's one of the things that we've talked about on property therapy is that you only have the property in which you can defend, right? And so that's a form of defending, right?
Right.
Protection.
Right. And I put together a small team, a very strong team of people that, and I have a security background. I used to be in biometrics, which is positive identification of people. It was many years ago, and where the systems have changed and other things have changed, the basic premise has not changed. I mean, you still have to go through certain steps to determine what's needed. But I worked with experts, and we were able to put in what I think makes Beth Shalom one of the most secure religious operations anywhere in the area.
When we were visiting there, Tilly was taking pictures.
Outside, I remember, because they came
that?
in. Yes.
And then right away, it was like 15 seconds. Was it like 10, 15 seconds?
Yeah. And
came right out.
Right. And the reason for that is, I don't know if that's when Pittsburgh happened or it was after the shootings, of course, at the Jewish Community Campus in the Village Shalom. But we try to be proactive on security. And on a couple of things we were reactive, like right after Pittsburgh, where we always had on Shabbat services a police officer outside. We made sure we had armed, manned security inside. Right? And we had a
hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Well, I wanted them to let people have to feel secure. Yeah. There's the reality and the perception. And regardless of how much security or how much whatever you think makes it very secure, the fact is, unless people believe that they are safe, unless people feel safe, it doesn't matter. It's useless.
Right, the security aspect.
So even if there was no issue inside, I wanted them to see that we were addressing it to make them comfortable, that we were watching out for them.
And that's one of the things we can talk about as well, is that security, how that affects the valuation of property. But so also as far as security, the impressive security when we were there is like when we went through the front door, then there was another door, and there was
actually a third door. You had to
I know, I saw that.
Yeah.
I was like, it was like going in the Star Trek Enterprise when they go to one point.
But we can't transport you anywhere. That's the only thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. We end up you're stuck.
Spiritually transport us.
But the good news was I had water and coffee in my office, so you didn't have to travel far for that.
Yeah. So no, it was very, very impressive because there was you couldn't just walk through door to door. You had to get approval, then approval again. Right. It was like, this is really impressive. Right. But the reality of it, though, in our world, that less the hostility to faith orientation is, it seems like it's becoming more pronounced. And like I was online on discussing on Facebook, they were just attacking the Torah and the Bible, and they were like attacking the Old Testament, the God of the Old Testament. And they're saying, how could that even be a moral God, or ordering the genocide, this, and that. And so I was just praying in my heart how to respond, because this is the nature of what we do at the Heritage Center. And so rebuilt the intelligent design and the faith orientation in the hearts and minds of people. And so what I was talking about is that we're living in a time that they were worshiping rocks, stones, all these as simplistic times. So it's like a more assertive God. That could be an element of it to get through to the simplicity of the time. One could be an aspect of it, and then also the fact that God was helping to establish a state for the children, for their culture, that he would wanted to work with a property therapy harbor for his people to be able to develop their talents, grow in wisdom, be able to channel themselves. So this is like a state. There's state actors. It's more than, this is not like one-on-one crime, like in criminal sense. It's kind of, and you're following what I'm talking about, the state aspect of it.
Right. And this is the kind of thing that I personally don't get into because I don't have the education to get into it. That's why God invented rabbis. But I think everybody reading the Bible, whether it's your Bible or our Bible or whatever Bible they're reading, whatever they believe in, if you take the life lessons that it teaches you, you're going to be a much better person, and this is going to be a much better world.
For real. Because you can see what you see in the book reflects of who you are. It's like flies. Is it oblivious to the myriad flowers in the garden? They go right for the dung. And it says more about them than it does about the property, because there's all the flowers and the teachings in the Bible, inspiration, truly inspiring things that helps you make the most of your life. It's all over in there, but they're just like the flies that go right to the dung. And it says more about them than it does about the Torah. So this is the powerful thing is that we want to imbue people with that faith orientation, because our natural rights come from our Creator, not because the government's doing us a favor, right? Because that's what the founders taught about. We are endowed by our what? By the government? We're endowed by our Creator, certain inalienable rights, right? Not because the government's doing us a favor, right? But we have our property. We take care of our property, and it takes care of us. So this is Adam Sheffield. We're on the Property Therapy Show talking to Bernie Bried, the former director of the Beth Shalom. And we've been talking about positive property therapy issues of creation and innovation, which is Bernie excels in this in his background in teaching this and with students, and which is creating things spiritually, physically and spiritually. And so along those lines is creating things spiritually. I wanted to play one of the songs that Tibor Klausner taught me. Please. Would you like to hear this?
Please.
And this is one of the Bach pieces. I studied with him the Bach Gavotte, which is a dance. It's a rondo, and what that means is, you know what a rondo is? What it is it states a theme, then does a variation back to the theme, variation back to the theme, variation back to the theme. So it's a rondo. It just always bounces back to the original melody. And so this is one of the pieces that I studied with Klausner. And this is, for those that have just tuned in, this is the Property Therapy Show. And one of the property therapy issues out there is intellectual property, right? Which is songs. And be able to present songs. And that's ultimately what you're doing, when you're presenting innovative ideas. You're presenting a song, and you want to convince, inspire your your audience.
Only I do it without the music.
Yeah, no. When you speak, it's music to my ears. I'm going to give a shout out to the maker of my violin. It's Anton Kreutz of KC Strings, a potential sponsor in the future. And but he's a Russian Jew. Was
he aware of that, by the way?
Yes.
That he's a potential sponsor?
Oh, yes, he will be, yes. Now he is. But this is what we want to have people. If I didn't have this talent, if I didn't have property, I couldn't develop my musical talent, right? So this is as real as it gets.
You have the talent. You've developed your musical skills with that talent.
Mr. Klausner had his edition of the Bach partitas and sonatas, and Bach wrote 5 of them. And Mr. Klausner was so well worn. Did you ever see it? His first cover page was a U. It was like this. It was like that. So the gavotte and rondo. So this is a dance that they in the Baroque era they have the violinists playing for their dancers. So the first theme it goes like this. That's the rondo theme again. Now here's the variation. Now restatement, here it is. Second variation. Restatement. Goes on from there.
Great.
Thank you.
Great.
And so here is some of the these are here, Bernie. These are called diminuendos that Klausner wrote in there, and so that it signifies how the sound disappears. So it's like, see that and Klausner was like, you want to make that tape it off, Adam, tape it off. Huh?
That's beautiful.
Bhagavat. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful.
And so this is a show about the creative property therapy issues of innovation and sound creation and all the beautiful sounds of innovative sounds that Bernie makes. And when he writes the inspiring vignettes that he's written and how the wisdom that he's developed and was able to share in his life and the testimony that he had and how that helped him become the executive director of Beth Shalom and was able to inspire people in the community. So we love the Jews in Kansas City, and so we thank you again for being on the show, Bernie.
Well, I thank you for having me here. It's really been fun.
Love you.
It's been wonderful.
This show is brought to you by La Plaza Restaurant, the best Latin food in Kansas City. Give them a call at 816-836-8688. This is the Property Therapy Show, property therapy forever. When you take care of property, it takes care of you. So FTS, and call me to get your FTS rings. FTS for Follow the Spirit. And call me at 816-674-3035. And we're going to take it out with the ending theme song, which is Dreamscape. We wrote all the music to the show. Or I wrote all the music to the show. This motivational show, and there's many ways to motivate people with good music as well as puppets and amazing people like Bernie on the show, interviews and history alive. And we brought Klausner alive today. And so it's a motivational. There's many ways to motivate people with property therapy. And so it's just a beautiful thing. It's such a treasure. Thank you very much for listening.